Hey lovelies, so about a year ago I made two different paint inventory systems, one being a digital version and one being a traditional version, and I uploaded them to my planner account. And here I am, I'm thinking I'm literally just going to download them, edit them a tiny bit, and upload them here so that it's all kind of on one account that's related to model painting. I thought I'd create two videos on paint inventory systems. Hey lovely, if you don't know me, I'm Imogen. So let me start this video by saying I've also done a digital inventory featuring paintRACK app. The app covers a selection of paint brands but is more geared towards mini model painters and the colours aren't as accurate. But it's an ideal on-the-go system to inventory which paints you have. I also wanted to just add a little disclaimer that I'm not sponsored by any of the products mentioned in this or the other video. So I actually bought this Filofax, which is a genuine leather Chameleon in personal size, years ago, secondhand on eBay because I was going to create an inventory binder. Here I am, some 8-9 years later, finally actually using it for its intended purpose and creating an inventory binder for my model paints. This system would work for any paints or other mediums such as markers and pens, etc. So for this, I used 120 GSM white cardstock and I also used a 100 GSM black cardstock. I simply cut these down to approximately personal size Filofax pages in the white, and then I used a black strip of card. I did this so I could swatch all of my paints and I would have an idea of what they would look like on both black and also on white. And although the card is quite thick, I knew this would hold it better than, say, using watercolour paper or some other absorbent paper. I hope this will also give me a more true to colour idea of what the paints are like, as opposed to looking at the bottle or a digital version of what colour the paint is meant to be. I simply used a double-sided tape runner and I did the black to the white and then I punched out the holes. To punch this, I used my Rapesco punch, which does a variety of different planner and paper sizes. I made this inventory system for each colour of my paints and a few extra pages, as I know I have more purples and flesh tones and will definitely need at least 2 pages. So firstly, I took each paint and I used this shaker to make sure all the particles of the paint are mixed up correctly. I first of all did this upside down, but be very careful not to damage the lids. And then I did it the right way up, but make sure that the lid doesn't come off, especially if you're using a paint like Citadel. Make sure that you keep a finger on top of the lid so as your paint doesn't go everywhere. I also like to give it a few seconds on the side, just to try and make sure that it's definitely mixed up. These are newer paints, so they should be less coagulated than, say, my older paints, which I would have given a little bit longer. While looking for a solution to my paint storage problems, I was somewhat inspired by my friend Adam, who's Nerd Skull Minis on Instagram, who literally did a drop of paint from the bottle onto the lid. And if your bottle lids are white, this may be a great way for you to swatch. I decided to take this a little further, especially since a lot of my bottles have black lids. So then what I'm doing here is I took this UV resin and I'm creating a dot on the top of each bottle. I used Let's resin, but honestly, almost any kind of UV resin or UV nail polish would work, especially if it's clear or white. Side note, not all UV resins can be cured with UV torch or lamp. Some UV resins also require LED to cure. I have a nail lamp which is UV and LED and cures all UV resins. However, the wire isn't long enough to reach to my table in this case, so I'm just using this UV torch as it works perfectly with the UV by Let's resin. I simply did a drop of resin on top of each bottle, cured it, and then used white and black primers by Vallejo to create a dual tone lid top. I decided for the sake of the video that I would grab out a couple of my older paints. So here is a terracotta which is quite badly separated and not doing so well inside its bottle. And then I also grabbed one of my older purples just so that I could swatch them in this video really. Once dried, I swatched the paint from the bottle onto the lid, as well as onto the black and white card pages that I'd made earlier. I then took note of the SKU number for the bottle, as well as the paint name and which line from Vallejo it was. For example, VMC is Vallejo Model Color and VGC is Vallejo Game Color. I do have a couple of Citadels now, so I will add like a CT for Citadel Technical, for example. It took me 7 hours to do the first 1/3 of my paint inventory, and definitely something I'm going to continue to do over the next week. But I wanted to get this video out to you guys and hope that it helps someone, because I know the system is already helping me. So as I said before, I am still working on doing this inventory. I have done about 1/3 of my paints, but I just wanted to show you how it's looking, as this is going to be a very much an ongoing project for the next couple of weeks. So how I've created this is I've done a tools section for any tools that I feel is relevant to add in here. Then I have a divider, which just says paints, etc. Then I'm planning to do my primers, black, whites, and greys, browns, reds, oranges, yellows, greens, and I'm obviously going to have to add a second page to greens, teals and turquoise, blues, purples, and I'm going to have to add a second page to purples as well, pinks, flesh and nudes, neon and fluorescence, which I also swatched all of these on their own specific color as well. But that's not something I'm going to do for metallics. So metallics is going to have its own thing. Then I've got special effects. Some of them you can swatch, some you can't really swatch. Washes, inks, and contrasts that don't fit in anywhere else. Varnish, glazing, and resin where applicable. Other. Not sure what's going to go in other. And then I've just created some extra blanks in the back of there. And then I have created a wish list. And it's just some plain note paper in the back, a couple of sheets of plain note paper in the back, in case I decide I want to transfer my stuff from my digital wish list, because there is a wish list on the paintRACK app that I shared, video that I shared, and I showed you how to use that. And if you haven't seen that video, definitely go check that video out. I will put a link in the description for that video. And then here's my traditional inventory, which, yeah, I'm really pretty happy with how it's coming together. And hopefully it'll reduce me buying paints that I already have, encourage me to use the paints that I do have, and be a really useful tool for me. And I hope perhaps it'll inspire someone else as well. And I hope that was helpful, or at least interesting in some way. I know this is more geared towards model painters, And I do have a little bit more information for my model painting friends who are into Vallejo. But otherwise, please like this video if you made it this far. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you like, what you didn't like, if this is helpful at all, or any other information. If planners and journals and stationery and artsy things and all that kind of stuff is your thing, then definitely subscribe and hit the bell for notifications if you haven't already. And yeah, until next time, thanks for watching. Bye. Since recording this voiceover, I've discovered that while I doubled up on some of the paints, a couple of them are the old and the new formulas, and they are actually different colours. I did a whole post about it over on my awitchesminis Instagram account, comparing these two purple paints, which should be the same colour. I later had the same experience with an orange. And a few people messaged me on Instagram to say they had the exact same experience for all of the old and new paint formulas. I thought I'd mention the app doesn't cover swatching for the old and new paint colours. Not that they're particularly accurate anyway, but despite being the same name, same brand, same SKU number, they are slightly different in colour and seem to behave differently, most of them drying down to a complete flat matte as opposed to the semi-shiny plastic that they looked before. Traditionally swatching them, I have added a little note to say old or new next to each of the swatches, so I know if it's an old version and I get the new version, I'll need to swatch it as it's most likely going to be a different colour to the old formula bottles. As well as making things a little easier for me, I just thought I'd let you know about this as well. And hopefully you find that useful. I know it's definitely something that a couple of people are a little bit upset about, especially if you liked a particular colour, you went out and bought the newer bottle and it's not the same colour paint. That'd be really frustrating. Or if you were halfway through a model, that'd be even worse. I hope that really this is something to just take note of. But I still plan to use Vallejo, and I am more impressed with the new formula and excited to see where things go from here.